Okay, now there's a problem in the English translation, every single English translation. So I'm going to give this woman the language she really needs, which is what the Greek actually says. It is too fair, mister.
Yeah, it is too fair, mister.
It is.
It is too fair, mister. I could exegete that for you.
fair?
No, it is too.
It is too fair.
It is too.
No, it is too fair. I'm from Texas. We talk in our own lingo.
Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table.
That's right. Don't you even give the dogs off the table your crumbs? I mean, even they get it.
And Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith.
Woman, great is your faith.
Let it be done for you as you wish."
Let it be done for you as you wish.
And the woman's daughter was healed instantly.
Woohoo!
Okay, let's do it again. Do it again. Do you need prompts on the language or not? I can feed you the prompts again.
What's my first line about?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll feed you lines. I'll feed you lines. Do you want to improvise lines, or do you want me to feed you lines?
I think I can remember.
Okay, so you got the basic movement down, the destinations, the places that something happens. Here goes. Jesus and his disciples left that place and went to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting.
Oh, hey, Jesus! Sorry, I had a brain fart there. Jesus, pay attention. I need your help. My daughter is tormented by a demon.
One of us.
Jesus! Yo!
And he said, "I was sent only the lost sheep of the house of Israel."
I was sent only the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Jesus!
But she came and knelt before him.
Jesus, help me. My daughter, she's tormented by a demon. I need your help.
It's not fair to take the children's food.
It's not fair to take the children's food and feed it to the dogs.
Hey, you may call me a dog, but even dogs get the crumbs off of their master's tables.
Bless you, child. Your faith has saved your daughter. She is well.
Really?
Beautiful. Okay, tiny example. I'm going to tell you. Great, thank you all very much. Give me a big hand. Yeah. So this is a method of dealing with text that I originally developed working at summer camp. But have taken it into all kinds of public liturgical settings, main service of a big church, a retreat for adults, women that were associates of a religious order, for their annual gathering, all kinds of different settings, intergenerational settings. And it's based on gesture. So method acting invites you to go inside and find the character in your own memories and feelings and so on, and then find the way to express it. I'm going out. In theater terms, Jacques Lecoq in France, I discovered after I'd been doing this, does a lot with using gesture to act your way into the character. But that's what we're doing. As the planner, I'm trying to find the basic shape of the thing and the gestures in order to take people who might say that they're not actors at all, recruit them on the spot, like I just did, from a congregation, and lead them through that twice. I might have, if we were not doing a workshop and I wanted to just roll things along, something clicked in a really nice way after Jenny laughed. And I might have said, "Oh, that's cool, that's a laugh, that frees things up. But let's just back it up again and do it without the laugh." Not because the laugh is bad, because it actually opens things up, and what happens after that takes people into the place that we certainly did feel when she came and grabbed Jesus' leg, or when Jesus won't even talk to her. So we would do it twice. Sometimes I've done it 3 times. Depends on the text, depends on what's happening. If I have a sense that we actually have the leisure to do it the 3rd time, after the first iteration, it goes fast. And then as I would do it the 2nd or 3rd time, I would say, and I'll say right now to the actors, so tell me what you, and this is really important, felt. Not what did you think, or whatever. simply tell me what you felt. So let's hear from the actress what you felt.
Ooh, she was outside.
Good.
Ignored and angry. For being
You felt
ignored and
angry.
angry for being ignored.
And angry. Good. Good.
And I felt bad ignoring her.
It felt bad ignoring her. Good. 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 So, any more quick ones on there? We could go, with the whole congregation. Actually, I'll go to the next stage up in a second. Anything more from the actors?
Well, she's extremely rude.
Jesus is being extremely rude.
No.
No, the
Jenny
woman
was
is. The
being
woman is.
extremely
Okay.
Yeah, I was.
What about that moment when you all kind of cut loose and all at once were telling Jesus, shut her up, shut her up? What'd that feel like?
Well, I felt good. I was really kind of irritated at Jesus for paying attention to her without paying attention to us.
Interesting. Not paying attention to us.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So what we're doing now, actually, let me stretch out to the congregation. Those of you that weren't in it, what did you feel? Anything?
Well, I felt isolated from the aspect of Jesus because Jesus' back was to me the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Good. What else? Anything?
I felt annoyed at Jesus' response.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Good.
I agree.
And the pettiness of the disciples.
Good. Good.
Sorry.
Good. No, this is really, really good. Anything else? Anything else?
Hollywood?
Okay, so I didn't ask you what you think because actually what I'm interested in is to taking the story into a place where it lives in your body, which is where your feelings are. And what I'm hoping is that after this afternoon's liturgy, if we were in that setting, you walk out of church with the story in your body. And that asking you what you felt reinforces that. So I'm not interested in sorting out the new interpretation. Now, I want to say something about interpretation. And I find this terrifically useful. The question, for example, the question I put to Jesus, who are you going to say the line to? The text doesn't tell us. And David made the observation, I think you just did, it makes a huge difference what it feels like.
I was
Kurt, thank you. It makes a huge difference what it feels like whether Jesus is talking to the disciples or talking to her. If he won't even talk to her, then it may turn out to be where we've entered a place where we have a reading of the story, an interpretation of the story that is ours in that moment, not the only one by any means, in which Jesus is doing what he thinks he's supposed to do and it feels crazy and uncomfortable. And so he's doing avoidance. Maybe. Or there's something going on like that. Is there a way, we're not going to do this, but we could. Another thing I like to do after we've talked about it is say, do we want to do it again or do we want to try anything differently? So we might decide, we're not going to do that this afternoon, but you get the feel of it. We might decide, let's try and see if Jesus can actually say those terrible words to the woman from his formed faith conviction, but speaking from a loving heart where it feels crazy to say them. Let's see if you can do that. How does it feel? And just do it. Okay, it's a completely different version of the story. And one of the things that gives us as teachers is the opportunity to say to the congregation, by the way, we're not trying to figure out what really happened. And we're not trying to figure out what must Jesus have been thinking. Scripture's not going to get you there. It will not. So there's this story, and in fact, as we start layering different possible interpretations, we're actually getting into the richness of the story. We're not getting to the moral of the story. We're getting into the dynamic of the story, the life of the story. D.
The observation, and I thought about this morning too, is using more present context than possessed by demons. She had epilepsy or whatever.
Yeah, you could do that.
Because then it's still a story.
Yeah.
And it starts to make it a little more real. Without changing the
So,
Although I do have to say that if you do have a child that has
feel that way.
Feel that way.
Okay, so this is the leader's choice, basically. Though you might have somebody make an offer of, I'd like to do it this way, and then you have to decide whether it's important you to stick with the text or not. A simple instance would be, I can't imagine Jesus saying this to the poor woman. Can't I say blank instead? Now my response would be no. This is a problem story, and it's interesting because it's a problem story. So I want you to say the actual words. Well, they feel terrible. Okay. They feel terrible to you. I'm asking you to just say the words. Figure out where your body is, say the words. And let's see what they feel like then. I don't know. Let's see. So, and as I said here, yes, Lord, yet is what the RSV says. Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. All the translations turn it into a kind of respectful, kind of judo-esque, going with the energy and coming up with a different outcome response. But what it actually says in Greek is nai, which is the emphatic affirmation of contradiction. And so it's a yes that's shouted back at somebody. And then it says Kyrie, Lord, but Kyrie is also just plain, it's a translation of an Aramaic, thank you. Aramaic word, and it's the kind of greeting of respect. So Mr. Kyrie would translate Mr. Also translates Lord, but it is too fair, Mr. is a fair translation that the translators are afraid of. So this is like what Dee's asking. As the person preparing this, I'm going to take it that direction because I think the text doesn't serve. Do I want to modernize it in some way? Do I want people to think this could have happened yesterday? What would that feel like? Then I might go with epilepsy. That's the preacher's choice. And then we have a conversation. Maybe we do it the third time, and then we move on. We have engaged Scripture, and I have not preached any sermon at all. But what I found, and I've done this for 15, 20 years, including 3 years where we had Saturday afternoon services at Gregory's, and this was what we did every single week. I find people coming back and saying, I was thinking about that enactment that we did, and I got to thinking about it, and I'm troubled about it, and thinking this and thinking that, and it reminds me of this thing that's happened in my own life, and so something is happening in our just entering into the question of what's in this story, and what's in this story for us today, because if we did it again tomorrow, it might be different in some way that was minor, but maybe some way that was significant. But if we enter that question in place, we actually are giving people something to take with them out there. Now, let's take a look at this.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Are there some passages, maybe this is a self-evident question, are there some passages that lend themselves much more easily to dramatization
Yes.
than others?
Does everybody have a copy of the appendix? I'm going to change course just slightly in order to answer that question, which is a fine question.
Oh, keep getting bored.
Anybody else? This is the appendix to a book that is in process, has been accepted for accessible, cheap online publication. It has photographs in it and stuff like that are not here. And the beginning part of it, it's not a big book, it's a little book, but the beginning part of it lays out theory of the practice, like I'm giving you verbally now, some storytelling about different situations, some strategies about how to recruit people. I always recruit Jesus last. I generally didn't do it this time, but I might. It feels like I've got a group that's going to be reticent. The first thing is I say, I need 3 disciples. Recruiting for a group is a little easier than recruiting for an individual. I need 3 disciples. They have one line, and I'm going to give them that line. It's a real easy part. Boom, boom, boom. And then I always recruit Jesus last because people are always reluctant to volunteer to be Jesus, but we've got some momentum going. There's stuff like that in the book. What's in the appendix is talking about kinds of stories, and as you'll see in the second paragraph, Kurt, not all of Jesus' stories or parables, I guess, led themselves to enactment. Some of the parables were great. For example, here are moments from some otherwise great stories that we don't think invite strong enactments. Who do men say that I am? Talking heads, no scene really. Good master, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Again, talking heads. Master, I have a request. Grant that my son sit one at your right hand and the other at your left in glory. There's content, there's theological thinking going on, but there's not really a story that has dramatic life to it. And then we came up with 3 different kinds of stories that work really well. What we just did, I say classic dramatic action. Theater thrives on conflict. If there is a conflict in the little story, it's going to make a good scene. So, and a conflict implies more than one character, pretty much. So, for example, in the Syrophoenician woman, we had a cast of 5. And we'll see some other ones and how we deal with that. So here's a list. Then what I call rhythmic stories, and we're going to be doing one of those, and it actually is going to be part of service on tomorrow. So we'll do it. We can decide whether we want tomorrow, for those that are here, for the closing service, whether we want to do it and how we'd like to invite other people into it. So a rhythmic story, the parable of the sower is a rhythmic story. The arc of the story is one character, it's the sower, but actually we can triple, quadruple, we can have lots of people doing the same thing, but it starts to turn into dance. And that's what gives it kind of a rhythmic sense. And the music that we were learning, we're actually going to do with that story. So that's a neat example of what we call a rhythmic story. And then iconic scenes. Real simple thing to do, it's kind of a tableau with the transfiguration, is to just frame the people. And I put Jesus in the middle, and we got, Moses on his right hand, his left hand, I guess that was, and Elijah on his other hand, and Peter, James, and John falling down at the bottom. And we're just standing there, and I say, okay, picture this is just radiant light. Okay, good. Now, what do you see in the scene? People say a few things. How do you feel about it? Okay, now, I'm noticing something I just want to point out here, which is Jesus has got murder on both sides of it. So, reminding people of Moses' murdering the Egyptian, and Elijah murdering all the prophets. Could you guys just stretch out a little bit? Okay, now everybody put your arms out. What do you see?
The 3 crosses.
Oh. So this is a picture of Jesus in glory. Or what is it? So that's a tableau, really. It's not really a play. But it is using people's bodies. And that's what I call an iconic scene. And the baptism would be another pretty evident one. Jesus goes into the water. John pours water on him, and the Holy Spirit comes down. So, if we could begin to sort of just it's trying to capture a moment rather than conflict. My main interest, though, is in what I'm calling classic dramatic action. So, is that a good response?
Yeah, I think so. I was just thinking of different...
And there's ones that just aren't going to go anywhere.
I think we've used tableau at our Christmas Eve service because we don't have enough kids. Actually, we didn't have any kids this year, so we didn't even do the tableau. But in the past, the kids can't act, and they can't memorize lines because they don't come early, because they just are there.
Yeah.
So we just had them come up and stand while the readings were being read.
Yeah.
So, like the the shepherds would then come up when that was part of the
Yeah.
reading. The wise men would come up when that was being read. So we build the tableau.
Yeah.
And that sort of worked as a
Yeah.
tableau.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking in years past, and probably this year too, like at Maundy Thursday service, I just get like 7 or 8 people that come into the sanctuary. And in the years past, we've just sort of read
Yeah.
the story. And I thought, would that lend itself to instead of reading?
Okay, so in terms of what I'm looking at for conflict, where's the conflict in that story?
Well, yeah, there's the betrayal and the,
No, in the story, the foot washing itself.
the foot washing and the, yeah.
Where's the conflict in the story?
Peter doesn't want to do it.
Peter doesn't want him to do it. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what drives our interest in it. So then we begin to picture, what does that look like? Peter must be witnessing this after a couple of other people. It doesn't make sense for him to protest if he doesn't know what's going to happen. So how is he watching? And that gives us a place to start to direct people to do something with their bodies. How is he watching? And then how does he express his horror at that? And what does he do with his body when Jesus says, if I can't wash your feet, you have no part in me. So he consents. The way he does the crazy thing about, then wash me all over. You're already clean. Come on. Look, you see this here? Oh, come on. So maybe that's not it, but we're actually looking for the gestures that make it live. So people, it's not this. Those who are washed are already clean. No, so we make it live. So I want this triple bold-faced side. Jesus appears to 7 disciples. So the appendix actually takes some text and models what we're about to do. This is my prep. So I'm looking here, and this is the text of John 21. And I'm looking and I'm thinking about what do I want people to experience? Well, where does it begin and where does it end? So shaping it into a little play or a story to be told is partly the teacher, leader, preacher, director's work ahead of time. The JavaScript, by the way, is because I copied this from a Ramus Bible, as I usually copy the Bible, and I just figured I'd leave it there because it made quite clear where it had come from. So I got, Jesus appears to the 7 disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. Then I have a little intimate dialogue between Jesus and Peter, and then it opens out into Jesus and Peter turning their attention to the beloved disciple. I'm inclined, and when you turn this over, I have made the decision that the first, from verse 1 through 13, is what we're going to work with, what we're interested in. So that's the first kind of editorial cut. Then if you turn it over, computers are great for this. I've actually kind of broken it into beats. So I've broken it into a series of events that are like the pulse and stand by themselves a little bit. That's my next stage of doing it. And I do that, as you can see, with the hard return into space. But I'm actually digging into the text and in some ways meditating on the text and beginning in an intuitive, kind of affective way to begin to picture people enacting it. So what are the pieces that I can give them that they can work with? And then also I'm internalizing it, so I'm picturing it myself. As I did this, how am I doing this? One of the things I notice is, almost without exception, if there's one voice, rather than having the dialogue be the 2 voices together, I give each one of those a moment. Because I guess it's like I'm telling Jesus what her lines are, telling Peter what he needs to do, whatever, rather than kind of arcing them together. They'll stitch them together. I'm breaking them apart to see that. They went in and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. You notice that there's an extensive passage of time in there. So I'm going to look at that and I'm going to think that's actually like a little rhythmic story nestled in this bigger story. I need to have some kind of repeated action that they can do that expresses the experience of being out fishing all night. Jesus said to them, "Children, you have no fish, have you?" Okay. So this is cool. Where is he speaking from? From the beach. So how far out are they?
Not very far.
Not very far.
They're close enough to hear it. They're probably not, kind of close enough that it's. Children, you have no fish yet, have you? I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? And is he calling out to them?
Probably. Yeah.
So again, I'm beginning to picture. I'm starting to find the body language that goes with it. And then I'm also, and this is interesting. Preachers know that the Gospel of John has got these huge monologues that just kind of go in circles. But the other thing is that John as a storyteller is really, really brilliant. Actually more concrete than the synoptics sometimes. And in doing this kind of work, John's actually the most fun to work with because he does so much telling you what people's bodies are doing. This detail, when Simon Peter heard it was the Lord, he put on some clothes, for he was naked. Okay, so I've got to find some gesture where this person is wrapping himself up. What did he put on? Is he putting on a full-length robe to jump into the water? That doesn't make any sense.
No.
He's wrapping something around himself because he feels like he's immodest, but he's going swimming. Okay, so I've got to figure that out. And he jumped into the lake. Okay, I've got to figure out the gesture that gets him actually out of the boat and into the lake, and we don't have water to dive into. So, what's that going to look like? And then I did this all as one beat because the pieces feel all tied together for me. Wouldn't necessarily be true for you. The other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish. How are they dragging it? What?
It's heavy.
You told me why they're dragging it, but I said how are they dragging it?
By hand.
By hand? Is that what you mean?
That's not going to get them anywhere.
The boats.
So they're rowing the boat. They're dragging the net. It just says they're dragging the net, but it implies that they are propelling the boat in order to drag the net.
Gotcha.
So I try to think that stuff through ahead of time and make it as concrete as I can because I'm looking for gestures, big gestures. Somebody come here and show me how to row a boat. Someone come here and show me how to row a boat. Great.
Great news.
Because he's from Minnesota.
No, you can't stay in one place. Because the boat's got to move. That's right.
You're rowing somewhere.
I want you to row from here over to the beach. Great. Okay. I love that. It has one problem, and it would depend on the setting whether that problem was a problem you want to solve in a different way or whether it would work perfectly. And that's sightlines. So every time you get down low, even if it makes perfect sense to get down low, you get down low, and the question is, can the congregation see? A small congregation, a study group, I've done this with a study group, that could be perfect. Otherwise, and I want to commend you for this part, I've often gotten people rowing and they're doing this. So I'm doing the right direction, that is, I'm rowing and the boat's going this way. But what I'm not doing is this, which is pulling. So this actually, from here down, it doesn't make any sense at all. But from here up, I'm telling the people, use the whole body. So can I have 3 people come here to row, please? 3 people, come on. It's a big boat. So how do you say?
Follow me. You don't ask.
Come over here. I mean, you might call it out like they do in, I don't know. But what happens if you're not in sync?
You're gonna run into each other.
Okay, so what I want to suggest is, let's have this be, yeah, no, I'm thinking, Kirk, what's the word you want to use?
Row.
Okay, so what we're going to do is the rhythm is actually going to be step, and then you say it. Row! Row. Okay, so you call it out.
Right step.
The step is not part of it. The step is the actors.
I know, but I still.
The character is saying row.
Because we all have to step at the same time.
Yeah, but I don't want you to call it out. So you feel it.
Row! Row! What? I'm good.
You're right.
Row!
Good.
Row!
Now, Kirk, you're up here. Coming from down here.
You're never going fishing with
I need a little more space. A little more space. A little more space. Let's do it again.
All right, here we go.
Row! Row!
And lean into it when you start, and then pull back. Okay, good. So you see what we're doing here? We're actually, in a very, very literal way, trying to find ways to direct our actors to embody something so that it's recognizable. And it's interesting that the act of having to have the three of them be in unison, visually and actually affectively, we love to watch people do things in unison. It seems to be part of who we are. So when you get an opportunity to do that and make it work, it actually engages the congregation and the actors in a different way. Great.
You know, just on a side note, I really appreciate what you say about embodying what you're trying to get all your actors or those participating in worship to do. I've already explained this to our church choir, who quite literally, would you believe the faith of a church choir that sings like this? Okay, and go sit down. That's every single one of our church members. So I asked them the question, do you believe what you're saying? And it gives them pause just for about 15 minutes before they forget to really think about that. And embodying the whole motion brings us in, just as I would hope that our choir members would bring us in through really passionately sing Bible.
Exactly. And in terms of the work that we're doing literally right now, I want to get to the point where the actors believe that they're rowing. But it probably is going to be, that's more method acting. So rather than saying, Kirk, do you really believe that you're rowing? Is how about if you really lean into it and really do? So I'm telling him what to do with his body. And in telling him what to do with his body, it starts to verge from, I'm pretending I'm rowing, to I'm rowing. The belief comes in the other way. Yes, that's exactly. How do we get there? And that territory is definitely part of it. What else do you see in this particular one? Let's put it down somewhere. Questions you would have if you were doing this as the preacher director. And when I say questions, I have my son is youngest son's a professional actor, and actors and directors have to be really specific. You make choices. Choices are interpretation. How far is Jesus from the boat? It makes a difference how you do it. We're not saying how it really was, but we're taking it to where it becomes believable. And so, and if I say, I want you to be here, and those people over there are 100 yards away, given that degree of specificity, it's plausible that you could shout early in the morning on a quiet water and have them hear you pretty well 100 yards away. They're not 100 yards away. They're 17 feet away. What's going on? Well, they're 100 yards away. That's how we're going to do it. And all I'm doing there is giving the people a frame to shape their gestures and their actions. Sometimes, let's see. The question of whether Jesus is looking at the womb. That's more than giving a frame. That's actually getting into, what does this text mean today for us? Let's try it this way. And sometimes making the choice takes us into a exploring, following an avenue to explore an interpretation of the text. And if you do this and do it repeatedly with different texts and different groups of people, you'll begin to sense, oh, okay, let's do it this way. And you actually notice, it would be interesting to do it that way, but we can't do both. And in between is worthless. So making specific choices. What other clues do you see here that you might give to your actors? So you're looking at how you envision it, trying to get to the specifics, anywhere you see one.
Yeah, hauling the fish ashore.
Right.
Great.
It just says Simon Peter.
Simon Peter by himself went aboard.
153 fish.
Yeah.
Large fish.
So I would not make a choice to have him count the fish. I think it's interesting. So the reader can point out that there were 153 fish. It's going to drive the storytelling crazy to have them count. How do they know there are 153 fish? I had no idea. Maybe they counted them later.
But what's
Who knows?
important?
Why is it 153? I have no idea.
But what's important is that just means that there's just a lot
of fish. And also for our purposes, what's important
And they're
is
heavy.
the boat. So I put the shore over here, the beach over here. The boat has come to the beach. Peter went aboard. He climbs into the boat. They were dragging it, so the net's up at the other end. And how does he? And he hauls the net ashore. And maybe at a certain point he decides this is just a waste of time, and he climbs back out of the boat and just drags it. Okay? That's what I mean by specific. Okay? I'm not a terrific mime, but I'm trying to do it with my whole body. There's actually some way that when we can get any of us offering our whole body engagement, it captures other people's imagination. It's not really creating an illusion that we're up for. What we're looking for is full engagement. And therefore catching people's imagination and their feeling of the text. What else do you notice of this?
Like the come and have breakfast, I see the gesture.
Good. Let's see. Before that then, they'd gone ashore and they saw a charcoal fire with some fish on it and bread. And where's Jesus? It doesn't say.
Just says bring me some fish.
Speak up.
Just bring me some fish. I can see Jesus warming his hands at this fire.
So Jesus said, yeah. So if he's warming his hands, doing specifics, is he standing here looking down at this fire that he's been working on? Is he kneeling?
Might be rubbing his hands together.
Is he rubbing his hands together? Might he even have his back to them? He's been busy on this thing, so he's rubbing his hands together and he glances over his shoulder. I don't know. But I try to make a lot of these decisions ahead of time so I can just take people who have no idea what they're going to do and give them something. And then occasionally, there's a choice one, like asking Terry, who do you look at?
So you kind of have it planned out to where you're going to give them cues or where they can make choices.
Right. And generally, I give them more cues than choices. I'm apt to take things and say, okay, there's one place here where it's going to be interesting for us all to notice that there's a choice. Otherwise, I will underline the choice, and I'll do something like say, let's play it this way. Imagine that he's got his back to them, so how does he talk to them? Well, he's got to lean over his shoulder. Today I like that idea. On the other hand, on another day, I might kind of like him standing on the opposite side of the fire. So there's a little bit of smoke and stuff going on here, and just kind of warming his hands. And the sense of the stranger, those both give them an interesting sense of the stranger. The back and the fire between. So I might go with either one of those. I don't know. And other pieces you see?
The hesitancy of the disciples to ask, who is he, because they know who he is.
Okay. None of them dared ask him. Okay, well, how are you going to embody that? Okay, good. Terry, do it louder.
You ask.
Okay? So it might be a little kind of hesitancy, a moment of consultation between them. So, Joe, if Terry said, you ask him, what's your response?
That's Jesus.
Good. And David?
That's Jesus.
Okay, so those three people have just figured out a way to do that. That communicates all of that hesitancy. And then we want to actually look at, where's that line? Jesus says, come and have breakfast. So they're in that hesitancy, and then it says, Jesus came and took bread and gave it to them and did the same with the fish. What's that look like? It's a golden opportunity. Golden opportunity. And it is a Eucharistic story. So I would kind of come up and actually break the bread and give it to each one, and I get them to put their hands out. And I probably, just for economy of movement, it says something about bread, and he did the same with the fish. I don't know if that's necessary, but so it might be. I mean, you could. So you get a picture of what the planning looks like, and I think. Turn to page 10 in the appendix. So this is also in the Gospel of John. It's also post-resurrection. This is actually one where what is presented every time I've ever heard it as a puzzle that preachers like to puzzle over. The text doesn't have the puzzle in it. Why doesn't Mary Magdalene recognize Jesus? The text actually, if you watch the gestures closely, it's perfectly evident why she doesn't recognize Jesus. How many insane sermons have I preached or heard other people preach because they didn't do this practice in order to engage and see how John's picturing what's happening? So I'm needing my actors to see the tomb. Let's put it here. I'm choosing to say it's got an opening that's about this high and that square. That's my choice. There's some reasons for it, and actually one of the reasons for it is that every time I get people to go down here and duck and look in, it's much more completely embodied than they looked into the tomb.
Yeah.
It feels different. And so then somebody's going to try and look in like this and say, wait a minute, how deep is that? Oh, and I'm afraid you're going to have to get down on your knee. Okay. And I'm deliberately pushing them into a fuller embodiment. So I've actually framed, the entrance to the tomb could be like this, and you could just look in. It's less interesting. Got the angels at the head and foot. So I got the actors playing Mary and the angels to actually picture. And what I'm picturing here is there's an opening in the middle of the tomb, and that opens out like this in two directions, which allows looking in to see an angel at either end, sitting inside in here. What I'm trying to do is actually make a scene rather than say what the text really says. But looking over here.
Don't you miss something in this? I mean, the first part would be, where's the stone?
It's not in the text.
I know, but that seems to be missing from the text.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's dramatic.
I'm thinking.
Sorry, I don't
No. That's exactly the kind of stuff that I do, and I think that we want to do. My sense is that who will roll away the stone, and the women coming to the tomb and meeting the angel that says he is not here, he is risen, is a different story. And the dilemma of the stone and the surprise of the angel drives that story. This story is driven by looking in, and then Mary encountering Jesus. So I think John has kind of stripped it away. That's the story that we're telling. So that's what I'd say in this moment. There's not a right answer to that. So if you wanted to put two different Gospels together and come up with that, certainly as I do this stuff, I wouldn't hesitate to put them together because they're not in the same Gospel. I'm trying to figure out how to enact the story. I might say, by the way, these are from 2 different Gospels. Today, we're officially the one we're reading is John, but I've brought in some stuff from Mark or Matthew or whatever. Yeah. But watch this. This is really interesting. So it says, Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, sob, 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 sob. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb. It's way down there. And she saw 2 angels in white. At that point, she's actually getting to look inside. And she's startled, sitting at the head of the feet where the body of Jesus is dead. And they said to her, this is really fun. So I've got these 2 angels in here, right? What do they say to her?
Why are you weeping?
First, they call her by name. So, I want you all are the 2 angels. I want you to whisper the line together. Okay, now I want you to be dreadful, awesome, radiant, and hugely powerful, and say it big.
Mary.
Oh, big! Come on, big.
Woman.
Just Mary. Just Mary. Just Mary. Just Mary. Just say Mary. Together.
Mary. Why?
Okay. Gravity. I want more gravity. Again.
Mary.
Yeah. The building felt that. Now, that's the range of what's possible. So, are they not wanting to scare her? Are they unconscious of how scary they are? I don't know. You can play it however you want to, but do you notice that taking the volume way down and taking it way up both create interest? Whereas if you just said, Mary, it's not specific. And then, so do the why are you weeping as a whisper. Yeah, and I kind of like the raggedy edge on that. Do it again. Don't even worry about staying together. Yeah, listen to that. Okay. Now, by contrast, that's wonderful. By contrast, and I want you to do this on cue. 1, 3. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. And I want the huge gravitas voice. Why are you weeping?
Why are you?
3.
Why are you weeping?
Okay. Scarier.
Scarier.
Why are you weeping?
Yeah. And let's even put just a little tone of reproach or accusation.
Why are you weeping?
Yeah. Okay. Choices. So we're actually we're trying to engage our intuition to find possible feeling in the text and offer feeling for people to respond to. We're not saying it must have been this way at all. And I would say that. Today, let's do this. We're going to do it as a whisper. And we could do that. Okay, so, watch this. This is fascinating. It says, she turned and glimpsed, is my word, and saw Jesus standing there beside, but didn't see it was Jesus. Okay, she's bent down and looking into the tomb when she does this. Now, how do I know that?
They didn't say she.
It's about 10 lines from the bottom, and it is in John. Jesus said Mary, and she turned and said to him, to Jesus in Hebrew, Rabboni. So she'd only made a partial turn before. It's right there in the text. You know, you're weeping.
And only half looks.
And then half looks, and then
And
she
she's looking with her peripheral vision over her shoulder. She's been looking in darkness, and she's been weeping. Of course she didn't recognize him.
Yeah.
John doesn't think this is any miracle. It's actually a human event. It's right there in the text. And I don't know how many times I had heard or preached or read that text and never noticed it until we got to the specificity of seeing what John is picturing as the body is given to us. Okay, here's another puzzle. Jesus says to Mary, do not hold on to me. Okay, what prompts that? You see, I've got it in bold. What I'm doing is I'm going through the text and identifying questions for myself and bolding them.
Well, she wants to gain her balance as she's turning around.
I don't know. I think she recognizes them and runs.
Hang on to that rope. You're not getting away from me.
Choices. We have a whole range of what might be going on here. And the only thing that we need to do, either as the director or giving it to our actor, is to be specific. So, does she rise and rush toward him? Does she actually grasp him, either in an embrace, or does she turn and fall into him and grab him around the knees? Or does she head that direction and does he stop her? The text simply doesn't tell us. But in order to enact it, we have to decide. So I would generally say, okay, the text doesn't tell us this. We've got this moment with a lot of tension into it. Let's try it this way. And again, what I'm saying to people is, you have to engage the Bible and make choices about how you read it. You may imagine it differently at a different time, but the text itself poses questions, and you can't do the work without answering them. So this appendix, actually here, look at this one. The woman taken in adultery. This is really, I love doing this one. That's on page 7. And I offer these to you as examples. This is we did the work, sort of the initial look. How do we do the initial look? So this is the next stage of my prep is what you're seeing here. And things that are bolded are stuff that I found that struck me. I'm looking for movement, gesture, places we have to make a choice. Looks like you need to leave.
I've got baby.
Good.
Apologize.
No apology necessary. Okay, so I need to help the woman and the religious leaders find a way. The woman, this is the collaboration between the actors, to convey that she's